and welcome to my channel. My name's Becca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. Today's video is all about season 3 episode 2 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. If you notice that I'm wearing the same sweatshirt as last video, it's because these two episodes were released in tandem, and yeah, I wanted to talk about them, so I'm doing this back to back, babe. So basically I like to split it up by episode just so you have a general idea of, you know, splitting it up. Maybe you didn't watch the first 2 episodes in a row, although you probably did, because who has that kind of willpower? Today we are going to talk about Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. It's that special time of year again, and I am pumped to be here. So before we get into the video, if you have not watched season 3 episode 2 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, then do not watch this video. I have other videos that I will link up above of both season 1, season 2, and season 3 episode 1 if you want to go check those out. Or if you don't mind spoilers, then hang out. I don't care. It's up to you. Before we get into it, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification, all those YouTube-y things. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season, because once I hit 1,000, then YouTube will monetize these videos, and that would be super dope for me. So I would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. Like love heart, would mean the world to me. So let's get into this video. I think this is going to be shorter than the last one because I felt like there was more plot, less clues in this episode, but let's talk about it. So first, we've got the scene where Ben is falling backwards. The way that he lands in the elevator is on his back. He's sat with his hand holding something and his other hand out. So most likely we can assume that because he hasn't fallen on his stomach, he's fallen on his back, he was probably facing the person who pushed him. I think that this is a pretty good clue because it means that he probably knew the person, or they were having a conversation. Someone didn't just sneak up behind him, push him, and run away. So he likely knew who the murderer was. We are watching Mabel kind of take photos of the corpse, trying to see the clues and hints. And I did notice one, and we do talk about this later in the episode, but he is holding a cast gift. It's one of those handkerchiefs, and it has the rattles on it. So that was his gift to everyone on, I don't know, the opening night, his cast gift to them. So everyone who was on the cast / also Howard has one of these baby rattle handkerchiefs. It looks like maybe he grabbed it when he was falling. We also see it kind of looks like he might have the letters go tattooed on his fingers. We also know that after he left the cast party to go back to his apartment, he did not make it. He's still wearing the same clothes. He's still got the stain of blood on his face. So this man did not take a shower. He did not make it back to his apartment before he was murdered. So those are a couple of things that we know about his murder just based on his body, and luckily Mabel took some photos, so I'm sure our girl will figure it out. We kind of continue on in the episode. We've obviously got Girl Cop, we've got Mabel talking to dead Ben, which is something that she obviously points out she hasn't done since Tim Kono. And we do see that Ben maybe had a deeper side to him, talking to her about how she feels lost, she doesn't know where she's going, she doesn't know where she's living. So we do kind of see a softer side to Ben, which is nice. As the episode goes on, a lot of it takes place, at the funeral. We see that they are seated. Mabel kind of decides she wants to go snoop around. So she walks up and we meet Ben's security guard. So as Mabel's walking up, he says to her, "Something is wrong in the state of Denmark." This is a Hamlet quote. I think it's really interesting to me because when they do these little tidbits, I always feel like they're important. So if you haven't read Hamlet, this is something that one of the guards says after seeing the ghost of King Hamlet walking around the castle. And Hamlet decides that the son decides that he needs to go and talk to his father about who killed him, and basically try and figure out if he can get revenge. So I feel like there's a couple of things that this suggests. For one, it could just suggest this is a suspicious way to die. Like something is wrong here, something is out of place. He must have been murdered. So maybe that's what it is. It's just a wrong state of events. But then we also have this underlying current in Hamlet of revenge, and also another father-son dynamic. You know, you've got King Hamlet and Hamlet, you've got Hamlet and his uncle who is, you know, inheriting the throne, and them trying to kill each other. So like the story of Hamlet is very, you know, it's a whole thing on its own. But is this quote that the security guard says to Mabel a clue that this was a revenge plot, that Ben was murdered as revenge for something that he did? Does it have something to do with the fact that maybe there is a father-son dynamic happening here? So Claudius is the one who conspired against the king and basically like had people paid off to murder his brother so that he could inherit the crown. Ben died because of revenge. Like someone was getting revenge on him for what he did. So that's really interesting to me, and I love a tidbit like that. We also go on to see the security guy. That he brings Mabel and Charles to his apartment, and he lives in 1C. He's obviously a huge fan of Ben, has lots of, you know, collectibles, as well as just like a random pair of pants. And it's pretty clear pretty quickly that he wasn't actually Ben's security guard. He was just like a stalker, a super fan. So we watch as Mabel and Charles both get chloroformed and then tied up in this guy's basement, and he basically thinks that they killed Ben and they think that he killed Ben. So it's pretty obvious that he did not kill Ben, because he really liked Ben, but that he's just this crazed fan who's trying to find out who did. And the key point here is when he shoves the handkerchief into Mabel's mouth, and we see that it's Ben's cast gift. And when she says to him, "Where did you get this?" he says that he went snooping around Ben's apartment and that he took it, kind of like as like a little, you know, priceless memento. And she realizes that if he has Ben's handkerchief, then whose handkerchief was Ben holding? So this brings full circle back to when Ben was laying on the floor, his body there after, you know, falling through the elevator shaft. Whose handkerchief did he grab as he fell? And this kind of does narrow it down to the cast of the show being one of the murderers, because only one of them would have had the handkerchief. Mind you, he was pretty broad about it. He gave one to Howard, who was not technically a part of the show, but who was the assistant. But it's like pretty clear to say that it's someone who was working on the show that had to do with Ben's death. We also parallel to this dramatic scene of them being tied up and looking like they're probably going to get chopped into little pieces. We have Oliver, who is clearly having a heart attack. So that's kind of stressful because obviously he's someone that we love in the show. He's one of the main trio. It kind of becomes a thing because he realizes that he was holding back on this show. Maybe he was afraid of like giving it his all because his last show, Splash, was such a disaster, which, you know, is something to bring up because the reference to Splash might mean that there's some connection here. We're not sure. But basically he has a heart attack, a small heart attack, and is told that he really needs to monitor his stress levels. But it does also inspire him to do the best version of the show that he can. And then later on we do see a scene of Charles and Ben. Charles telling Ben that he's done a really good job on his opening monologue, which is what we see him falling to and what we hear like when Oliver's having the heart attack. So this is obviously like a momentous line for the show. But we see Charles say like, "Good job." Ben says, you know, mocks him. And Charles is kind of like, "What's your problem? Like, why don't you like me?" And we kind of hear the origin of the Ben-Charles beef, which is that when Ben was a child actor, he was 8 years old, he was on Brazos, and Charles got him fired and basically said like, he's not good to be on this show, get rid of him. So Ben has held that grudge ever since and has decided that instead of getting Charles fired from this play, he's going to make his life a living hell. So that's kind of where we start with that relationship of like what happened between the two of them. You know, Charles is kind of telling Mabel you know, that he never got the chance to make it right with Ben. And then kind of the end of the episode, which is we see that there's a new detective who is working with Detective Williams, and that he's kind of like, you guys are idiots. How did you, you know, end up in this basement tied up? Didn't you know that this guy was a stalker? So those were all of the clues slash like key points of season 3, episode 2. And the only addition that I feel like this really made was the key clue of the handkerchief that Ben had when he fell. So, you know, this does mean that it's someone from the cast and crew that was working on the show that had, you know, access to probably Ben's dressing room. Maybe they were able to poison his food. And also they were invited to the cast party, so they were in the building and had the opportunity to kill him. That kind of leaves the same list of characters as suspects as the last video I made. Nothing has really cleared up in terms of like who the killer is. The only question we might have is if we were thinking that the killer was Dickie, Ben's brother, who would have the easiest access as Ben's assistant to both his dressing room, his food, and, you know, was going upstairs with him to his apartment when he died. He wasn't a cast member. Did Ben give him a handkerchief? We don't know. So if he wasn't a cast member and he didn't have one, does that mean that he's innocent? Is he too obvious of a choice? We have a lot of characters that have been newly introduced that we don't know as well as the OGs. So it'll be really interesting to see how they go about this. But I will say I'm really happy that the murder happened in the Arconia, because I just love the building. I said this during my trailer review, but I really feel like it is a character, it is a part of the cast, and the Arconia has a special place in my heart, so I'm glad that we're gonna be spending time investigating a murder in the building. I do think that that's important. So yeah, those are all my thoughts for season 3, episode 2. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all those YouTube-y things. Like I said, I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so please, please, please help me out. And that would mean the world to me. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching, and drop all your theories down in the comments below. I love to see them. I love to hear them. Feel free to message me on Instagram and let me know what you're thinking, because I like talking about the show. So I will see you guys next time with another episode of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. Bye!